The term meme was introduced into the English lexicon in 1976 by evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins in his book, The Selfish Gene. It is understood to be the cultural parallel to the biological gene, or to put it simply, memes are cultural information carried and shared between people. They can both replicate and possess the ability to evolve or mutate at random as they spread. And the idea of memes have existed within the Metal Gear series since the Solid games, with it even being the main theme of Metal Gear Solid 2 in Raiden's own character. Though, if there's one other character who has openly bathed himself in the concept, it would have to be the masked, mellow, magnet-manipulating mafioso mindfully managing major matters, Monsoon, of the Winds of Destruction. Monsoon acts as one of the main minor antagonists in the main story of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. As well, he appears in the Jetstream Sam side story DLC. He is a cyborg ninja and member of the private military company Desperado, specifically being a part of the Winds of Destruction unit. And I refer to him as a cyborg ninja instead of as a mercenary because he is actually a practitioner of ninjutsu, unlike the other members of his unit. This is because Monsoon's skills don't come from prior military experience, but instead come from his time in the Cambodian mafia, which, alongside the genocide he witnessed at a young age, helped shape him into the man he is today. Though before we get too deep into that, let's understand the meaning behind his code name and design. Now, Monsoon is only ever referred to by his code name in-game, which is the one that he earned within Desperado's Wind of Destruction unit, this of course being Monsoon, which is a seasonal wind pattern that is most commonly found in Southeast Asian locations like Cambodia. There are even different types of monsoons depending on the season, with wet monsoons being ones that are usually accompanied by a downpour of rain, hence the name, and then you have dry monsoons, which are accompanied by warm, dry air that tends to dry out the area. These wind patterns are polar opposites of each other and can demonstrate how drastically different nature can make things appear, which fits perfectly with Monsoon's character, of course. And while Monsoon does come from Cambodia, he wasn't always planned to be from there. Instead, in the Collector's Edition guide, they mention how in development he was said to be from the Ryukyu Islands in the Okinawa prefecture of Japan, which is also why his weapons of choice were dual sais, known as the Okinawan weapon. Along with this, sais were also used commonly by the ninja of Japan, and it's this tie to the ninja that impacted how Monsoon's fighting style would develop, with Kenji Saito wanting to create a member of Desperado who looked like a cyborg ninja, which we can actually see in his cyborg body's design, with the boots and thighs of Monsoon resembling that of the Jika tabi and baggy pants of the traditional ninja. The shape of his head is also pretty interesting as well, with it having a reverse visor design, with the flip sticking out the back, which in my opinion gives him a bit of the appearance of a preacher when viewed from behind, which given his habit to go on long speeches, I feel might be intentional, but there isn't anything specifically saying that in any of his design documents. Though speaking of elements of his character that we can only see in character documents, under his mask Monsoon has modified eyes, with them having two different states. In their neutral state, they actually kind of look like Bato's eyes from Ghost in the Shell, but they can extend out from the sockets and look around in 360 degrees, similar to that of snail eyes, though the tips of these eyes are also designed to allow Monsoon to plug them into things, with the most obvious socket being the inside of his own helmet and the master control spire in the center. This control spire is an electromagnetic generator which rests in the center of his faceplate and helps him control his segmented cyborg body through magnetic manipulation, as Monsoon's body has been roughly divided into 22 different pieces, which are all held together by powerful electromagnetic forces, which can either be reinforced and manipulated to allow Monsoon to move in normally impossible ways, like walking on the ceiling. But he can also separate his body into segments to reach and leap great distances with ease. Now, this electromagnetic generator is powerful enough to allow Monsoon to magnetically lift massive structures like APCs and helicopters in a manner similar to that of psychokinesis. He is even able to uproot uproot mostly stone structures by pulling them up through their reinforced rebar within. Though he mostly uses this electromagnetic manipulation to allow him to attack from a distance with his specialized size, Dystopia, which are weapons that can be recreated by Raiden after defeating Monsoon, and are probably his most limited sub-weapon that you acquire throughout the game. But it does have its use cases, as the Sais were designed to be paired with Monsoon's own magnetic manipulation. They can act as sort of a grappling hook for Raiden to grab onto enemies and pull himself close to them, while delivering an extra kick as well. Using this feature of the weapon allows players to more easily focus flying enemies, especially if they let it charge all the way, as it will also cause a stun effect similar to that of an EMP grenade. Another use case for this weapon is to trigger Sundowner's own explosive shields from a distance, you know, just in case you wanted to make the easiest fight in the game even more easy. Now, the name Dystopia was selected to play into Monsoon's own nihilistic views on the world, which he inherited from his violent upbringing, as long before he was a cyborg, Monsoon grew up during the roughest period in Cambodian history, as he lived in the Cambodian capital during the reign of the Khmer Rouge, and was subjected to the Cambodian genocide. And due to that, he eventually came to bear witness to the infamous Killing Fields, a mass gravesite where prisoners were taken and savagely beaten to death with pickaxes as to spare wasting bullets on them. It was this dark moment in time that left Monsoon ultimately broken inside. He eventually walked away from the situation, accepting that life had taught him one cruel lesson, that only the strong had the right to lead the world, based simply on the natural structure of survival of the fittest, which is an idea that he eventually went on to apply to cultures and ideas in the form of memes, as all humans are shaped by them. Their ideas and personalities are based on the memes they grew up around. As Monsoon puts it, they are the DNA of the soul, and much like genes which shape our physical body, memes shape our views. And it is the strongest of these memes that outlive the weak. Along with this, memes survive based on infection and evolution, reshaping what people believe in order to perpetuate themselves. And with that, Monsoon has come to believe that if someone is subjected to a meme for long enough, they can change that person. And because of this, from Monsoon's perspective, concepts like free will must be a myth, as you are only a byproduct of whatever memes you were subjected to, and because of this, anyone can be reprogrammed to feel a certain way about anything. In a similar way, Monsoon views religion as just another meme perpetuated across the world. Eventually, this mindset allowed Monsoon to accept the Cambodian genocide took place simply because it was in man's nature to kill or be killed. Survival of the fittest, and if he wanted to avoid being killed, he would need to seek power. Power that allowed him to be the one who killed. But instead of joining the country's military, most likely based on a subconscious bias against his home country, he instead joined the Cambodian mafia and took part in underground drug trade, human trafficking, and assassinations. It was also here where Monsoon learned to master the Sais, a weapon which was once a farming tool that modified in revolt into a deadly weapon. And it is because of this history of the weapon that makes it perfectly match Monsoon's character, even though he is no longer tied to Okinawa. And within his gang, his criminal record quickly outranked his associates, being known as excessively cruel and reflecting the blood-soaked battlefield in which he was raised in. Though, after a particularly rough shootout, Monsoon found himself critically injured and in a desperate need to not be the one killed. He clung on to life and became a cyborg, which, artificially extending one's life through machinery, seems to be the exact opposite of his views of letting nature take its course. I'll get a little bit more into that later in the video. This procedure did allow him to connect himself closer to nature though, more than he'd ever been before, as his body was created to utilize the world's natural magnetic forces, something he would become quickly familiarized with in educating himself on concepts like the Lorentz force and Fleming's left-hand rule. He also moved on from his work in the criminal underworld to join the PMC Desperado, most likely because the company who helped create his artificial body was World Marshal, a parent company to Desperado, though the added safety given to him by a private military force must have seemed a little appealing after his brush with death, especially since it would help him maintain his position of power in the world all the same. Along with this, like other cyborgs in Revengeance, Monsoon had has a serial number associated with his body, this being 976AZQEE. The same string of digits is found on the serial numbers for Mistral and Sundowner, two other members of the Wind of Destruction, as well as Jetstream Sam's armor suit, though the numbers that come before it has a Gorowase meaning that plays very well into Monsoon's own character, as the numbers 976 can be read as Kushiro, which is harmonious with another Japanese word that is comprised of the characters for old stories or ideas, and to change and replace through the ages. So together, Kushiro can be understood as generational changes, which is exactly what memes are in a way. They are stories, ideas, and cultures that change and grow as time moves forward, all dependent on who adopts them. Though, I should say that this is more likely a coincidental happenstance, as the numbers next to the Wind of Destruction serial numbers simply count up from 976. Though, what this number does denote is that Monsoon is likely the oldest member in the group, and we can see his age in his interactions with his new boss, Stephen Armstrong. Armstrong was a man who was a firm believer in the idea that might makes right is the natural state of the world, thus the strong should have the freedom to fight and kill for what they believe in, and due to that, Monsoon quickly grew fond of Armstrong's ideals, and his loyalty was not lost on his boss, as in return, Armstrong grew to respect Monsoon's own opinions, willing to ask him how he feels on certain subjects, confident that he would answer honestly instead of blindly agree with him like a yes man. Together, the two of them would work to recruit more members for the Winds of Destruction, as well as setting their sights on other traveling Ronin like Jetstream Sam, who, while meeting originally as enemies, soon became one of Monsoon's own allies, with them bonding over their shared views of humanity's natural preference for violence. And together, the two of them would work to break down Raiden when he conducted his raid on World Marshal HQ in Denver. As in their initial encounter, Sam pointed out to Raiden that he was holding himself back and denying his weapon its purpose, where he would then later go on to reveal that this facade of saving the weak and using his sword as a tool of justice are simply narratives that Raiden created to help him cope with the joy that he feels when he kills, as not everyone he cut down was given the fair shot at life that he tries to tell himself that they were. Following this, Monsoon points out that these ideals that Raiden have created are exquisite, or pretty memes, that will allow Raiden to die without a guilty conscience, but ultimately, his feelings are unnatural. This prodding ultimately pushes Raiden past his breaking point, allowing for his suppressed Jack the Ripper side to re-emerge and fuse with his new self. Monsoon, initially shocked by this transformation, assuming that he has gone insane from the psychological attack, calls for his execution, only to soon come to realize that Raiden is just playing into his nature. And with no other options, Monsoon prepares himself for a literal clash of wills, as Jack wants to give a demonstration on how he earned his name. And Monsoon's fight is accompanied by his boss theme, Stains of Time, which has lyrics that directly tie into Monsoon's own life and history, and his own point of view, as well as one of the best opening riffs.
Drop this falling gently down
Though I don't want to move on from Monsoon's boss fight just yet, as it's probably one of the greatest moments in Revengeance, if not one of my favorites, as it comes off as a final test of both Raiden and the player. As not only does it deliver the final tool in Raiden's moveset's arsenal, this being Ripper mode, which the game gives you free reign to play around with by making the blade mode meter unlimited during this boss fight, they also don't let you get too big of a head after you get it, as Monsoon is intentionally designed to punish overly aggressive or confident button mashers, and to properly beat him requires you to understand and utilize the game's parrying system, as well as understanding quick reactive blade mode segments, as due to Monsoon's ability, he can magnetically disconnect his body parts, meaning that he can dodge your sword swings with ease as long as his electromagnetic generator is active. He is also really quick on his feet, being able to maneuver around Raiden in just a moment and strike him with one of his many combos. One attack in particular is his smoke grenade stealth assault, which is designed to punish players who haven't picked up on how to parry correctly yet, as he attacks them relentlessly from multiple angles and shifting in patterns from aerial to ground-based strikes. Though, if you have put at least a modicum of effort into understanding the parrying system, this attack is more or less a joke, and for those who have mastered the provided moveset, they can actually reactively punish Monsoon for overcommitting during this attack by using Raiden's defensive-offensive skill. Though, if you rely too greatly on that, you'll still be punished during Monsoon's invulnerable state, as he is immune to defensive offense when he is glowing purple. I also like his magnetic barrage attack, as while it is a bit of a pace breaker for the fight, the fact that it increases the number of objects thrown every time he uses it means that the longer you are fighting him, the more Monsoon is getting desperate and resorting to overwhelming Jack with sheer numbers. As well, this segment of the boss fight feels almost like a preview of a later attack during the final boss fight in the game. Though there are still options provided for people who refuse to engage with the game's own systems, as you can land either a seemingly random strike on Monsoon's head during the middle of one of his attacks when he's in his invulnerable state, or you can utilize items like rations and EMP grenades dropped by the vehicle assault segments and strike the generator during the short window of vulnerability he has when he is hit with the EMP grenade, which the game actually does factor into the final scene in the fight, as when Raiden is delivering his final blow, if you abuse Monsoon's natural weaknesses to EMPs, then he considers the fight a foregone conclusion, telling Jack to do as he pleases, succumbing to his nihilism and depriving the player, partly, of feeling like they truly beat him. This also occurs if you perform poorly during the fight or take too long to beat him, where if you overpower him through sheer skill, parrying, and mastery of the game's systems, you reawaken that buried fear within Monsoon, and he cries out for you to stop. Being overwhelmed by the eclipsing gap between his and Jack's own strength. You have defeated not only him, but his mindset as well. This also goes to shine a light on one other detail of Monsoon's character, as for someone who takes such great pleasure in breaking down others' facades and waxing about the natural processes of the world, he himself has been putting up a front ever since accepting his destructive worldview. As for someone who so confidently talks about how the strong should be justified in the killing of the weak, he is just as terrified of death as those he carelessly massacred. Along with this, Monsoon is always clinging on to any position of power, as well as violently trying to maintain the status quo. Be it in his overly cruel tactics during his time in the mob, his evolution into a cyborg, or even joining a PMC and leaving the ruthless world of the underworld, which Kevin, one of the Codex support members, even mentions could have been done because PMC work is considerably safer than the mob.
Maybe he just decided PMC works better than the mob. The two worlds are closer than you might think. Boris has got a lot of ex-military buds that now work for the Russian mafia.
I guess either profession guarantees plenty of excitement, if that's your thing.
And all of this coming to a front with him begging for his life from a ruthless monster like Jack the Ripper. Though, even with that understood, this is all just simply a slip of the mask, as in Monsoon's dying moments, he becomes rather accepting of his defeat, almost peaceful in his embrace of nature, even feeling in some way like he has won the fight, as his memes will live on in Raiden's reawakened Ripper persona, and allow the slaughter of humans humans to continue. Though, what Monsoon's nihilistic mindset failed to let him realize is that this obsession with nature, natural selection, and memes blinded him to the fact that memes are unlike genes in one specific way. They can be self-reflected upon. As Richard Dawkins goes on to describe in the same work which the term originates from, a person can become self-aware of the things in their lives that they have picked up from culture, fashion, and ideologies, and identify the good aspects of these memes as well as the bad. And the point is to train themselves to snuff out the latter.
Dawkins wrote about that too. How we can rebel against our genes and memes. Once you're aware of your own memes, you can train yourself to identify and replicate the good ones.
And kill the bad ones.
Right.
Monsoon was a victim of a terrible regime who never truly recovered from the damage of his past. He, like most bosses in Revengeance, are very similar to Raiden in his history and ultimately impacts Raiden's journey to help him realize his own failings and grow stronger because of it. And these elements of his character, both the design, writing, and meta-narrative, has made him into Raiden's own Psycho Mantis in a way. Though, I should say that Kenji Saito claims that they were not thinking of Psycho Mantis when creating Monsoon, it's just that this magnetic meme machine definitely carries on Mantis as well. Now, ultimately, Monsoon is one of the most memorable characters in the whole game, and I can't ignore the fact that this was due in part to his charisma, which was given life to it thanks to John Cassier's own fantastic voice acting, as he carefully treads the line between hammy, over-the-top acting and a serious, nature-loving murderer. Though, I guess that should be expected from the voice of the Crypt Keeper.
My name is Monsoon, of the winds of destruction. Is it really so horrible? They're only trees. You have no choices to make, nothing to answer for. You can die with a clear conscience. Now there's a pretty meme. Exquisite.
And, of course, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't mention or address his popularity coming due in part to his excessive use of the word meme, which I've used quite a bit throughout this video, and due to its own usage online, has evolved into something beyond its original meaning, which, honestly, is very meme in and of itself. But it hasn't exactly changed the word as is, and it's always been a major part of Metal Gear at least since Sons of Liberty. But it would be disingenuous to say that the Rising staff wasn't aware of the term's evolution beyond Dawkins' intentions.
The Sears program's one hell of a bad meme machine.
Though, luckily, the game never really tries to lean too heavily into the jokey nature of the word, giving it all the due respect that the concept deserves and being very genuine with its usage, which is incredibly important given how much that word means to Raiden's character. It's also used as a great narrative tool to demonstrate the dangers of non-self-reflection, as while wind flows and rain falls, humans build complex structures. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more videos like it in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/MediNotTheBadGuy. Every little bit helps keep this channel flowing as smoothly as it does. And if you want to establish some new memes, well, you can find it within a copy of Shimonetta, A Boring World Where the Content of Dirty Jokes Doesn't Exist at BuyShimonetta.com.